The first thing I noticed when I stepped into that over-decorated ballroom was a smell like someone had tried to Febreze over corporate decay. Champagne breath, perfume samples, and the underlying scent of desperation. I adjusted my black blazer, the same one I wore to my last 3 optional work events, and edged toward the perimeter, as I always did. No name tag, no smile, just Emily Carter from Risk. That's what they called me. They bothered to call me anything at all. Emily Carter from Risk, like I was a footnote in an annual report, not the reason we hadn't tanked in the third quarter. Across the marble floor, Olivia Harrow, blonde, wealthy, and barely sober, floated around as though she owned the air itself, which, technically, she kind of did. The CEO's daughter, newly appointed head of events, whatever that meant. Her sequin dress shimmered like a disco ball had collided with a bottle of champagne, and her smirk could have auditioned for a Netflix reboot of a high school villain. Every time she passed someone, laughter erupted, mostly men in double-breasted suits trying not to sweat through their speeches. I didn't need a spotlight. I needed a drink. When I approached the bar, the bartender handed champagne to the man behind me first. He was a junior analyst, 6 months on the job. I had been there 8 years. 8 years, writing the risk reports that saved our skin during the New Jersey data breach, flagging shady wire transfers no one wanted to discuss, cleaning up after Olivia's PR disasters and her father's creative accounting. And yet, when the slideshow started on the massive projection screen labeled Harrow and Price, our people, our power, my name wasn't there. Everyone else from my team had a slide, even Marcus, who once used Comic Sans in a quarterly report. But not me. I stood there, glass of lukewarm white wine in hand, pretending not to notice, while my insides curdled. It was like watching your own erasure in ultra-high definition. People clapped. Olivia made a joke into the microphone about working hard or at least looking hot while failing, and everyone laughed. I sipped my drink and imagined hurling it into the plant behind me, but I didn't. I smiled. Always smiling. That's the thing about women like me in places like this. We learn to disappear without vanishing, blend into the edges. Keep everything running while everyone else takes the credit, the bonuses, the corner offices. Oh, and hey, since you're listening this far, gotta say something real quick. 95% of people who hear these stories never subscribe. If you're one of them, maybe change that today. Give it a like too. Not for me, for the team who helps tell these stories. They read every comment like it's gold. Helps more than you know. Back to the ballroom. Olivia breezed past me, drink in hand. Tipsy enough that her laugh had a slur to it. "Didn't see you in the slideshow, Emily," she chirped, sympathy oozing like perfume. Must have been an oversight. Then she clinked her glass with mine before drifting back toward her tribe of finance bros and Instagram wives. I froze for a moment, not in shock, not in rage, just the final little click of a switch I hadn't realized was waiting. Because the thing about being invisible is that it makes you a damn good observer. I had seen everything. Every audit, every ignored discrepancy, every time investors' concerns got buried under PR fluff. And I wasn't just Emily from Risk anymore. I was the one person in that building who knew exactly how to dismantle it from the inside. Someone very powerful had been waiting for me to say when. Olivia tottered back to the stage, glass of bubbly in one hand, probably live streaming herself to her 12,000 followers who didn't care about charitable tax write-offs. The auctioneer, a sweet older man in a bow tie who clearly wasn't paid enough, had just finished selling dinner with a partner nobody liked. Olivia snatched the mic like she was hosting the Oscars. Okay, listen up, she slurred, teeth gleaming like veneers on parade. That was cute, but boring. Need something fun, something unexpected. I already knew I wouldn't like whatever came next. I tightened my grip on the wine glass and watched. Olivia pointed into the crowd like a tipsy game show host. "How about we auction off my dad's most boring analyst?" A few people laughed. A couple choked awkwardly. Then her gaze fixed on me. "Come on, Emily," she said. "Been standing over there all night like a sad little candle. Let's put some life in this room." God help me, the spotlight moved. A blinding white-hot beam tracked across the ballroom and landed directly on me. It felt like being dissected on a silver platter. I froze. One foot half-turned as if my body wanted to flee before my mind gave permission. Whispers floated from the back. "Wait, is she serious? Dude, that's Emily from Risk." Olivia doubled down. "Don't all raise your paddles at once. We're talking about the woman who once flagged a decimal point error in a risk matrix, like it was national security. She makes Excel spreadsheets cry. Down. Nervous laughter, then silence. I stood under the light, feeling the heat of every eye, every judgment. I had walked through firewalls, survived layoffs, saved this company from a PR nightmare caused by algorithmic errors that wrongly flagged widows as credit risks. And this humiliation was their thanks. No one bid. Not because of respect. No one wanted to be the first to turn her joke into reality. It would no longer be Olivia's cruelty alone, it would be theirs too. Olivia pouted, oblivious or drunk enough not to care. I caught sight of a man by the catering tables, standing perfectly still. His charcoal suit, calm demeanor, and sharp eyes suggested someone accustomed to controlling the uncontrollable. Derek Vaughn. The spotlight finally shut off. I could breathe again. Olivia made a half-hearted joke about laughter being necessary, then stumbled off stage to refill her drink. I smiled, nodded, and blended into the crowd, hiding my storm behind a practiced mask. But something had shifted. Derek Vaughn was watching. He gave a subtle nod. I knew then I was not alone. The ballroom seemed to breathe around me, a mixture of polished marble and fading perfume, the air vibrating with careless laughter and clinking glasses. Across the room, Lauren Westfield, blonde, heir to the empire, moved like she owned the atmosphere itself. Every laugh she drew felt like a spotlight on her privilege. Her sequin dress caught every overhead light, scattering it like fractured diamonds, while her grin sliced through the room, sharp and rehearsed. People leaned into her orbit, their voices a chorus of sycophancy. I lingered on the edge, a shadow among the glittering, adjusting the sleeves of my black blazer. 8 long years. 8 relentless years of patching leaks, unearthing risks, and smoothing over the disasters she left behind. And yet here I was, overlooked, unrecognized, my name absent from the grand slideshow celebrating team achievements. I sipped my lukewarm wine, pretending to admire the crystal chandelier above, but inside, a simmering storm churned. Then it happened. Lauren spotted me, her lips curling in faux sympathy. "Oh, wasn't your name on the slide? Must have been an oversight," she said, clinking her champagne against mine before floating back to her circle of finance bros and socialites. Something inside me clicked a switch I hadn't realized existed. The invisibility I'd endured had honed me into a perfect observer. I saw every discrepancy, every buried note, every shortcut and error she'd relied on to skate by. And now, I had the tools, the knowledge, and one ally, waiting in the wings. Later, standing at the bar, I caught a sharp gaze from across the room. A man in a charcoal suit, observing with a calm precision that made him seem untouchable. His eyes didn't flinch, didn't dart away. He was measuring the fallout, calculating the impact. That small nod, almost imperceptible, confirmed my suspicion. I wasn't alone. After the gala, while the crowd dissipated into muted chatter and jazz, I found a quiet corner, my drink untouched. 2 HR representatives, clipboard Greg and yoga Karen, approached. Their smiles were rehearsed, the tone too soft. "Just checking in about earlier," Karen said, voice syrupy, expecting a flinch. I didn't give one. Silence did the work for me. Once alone in the bathroom, I opened the encrypted app, tapped one name, and typed 3 words. "It's time." Seconds later, a single reply appeared. "Always." That was all the confirmation I needed. The invisible Sarah was gone. In her place, someone ready to reclaim what had been ignored, dismissed, and mocked for too long. The first ripple in a storm months in the making had begun. The crowd drifted like waves around the ballroom, laughter and clinking glasses creating a haze of distraction. I stayed at the edge, watching. Every smile, every nod, every carefully timed joke felt rehearsed. But then Derek Vaughn moved through the crowd, deliberate and calm, his eyes scanning the room like a chess master planning 5 moves ahead. I didn't need to know him to know he had influence power. Wasn't in the shine of his cufflinks or the cut of his suit. It was in the way people unconsciously stepped aside when he approached. I sipped my wine, my mind racing. The idea that I could just vanish into the background had dissolved with that spotlight incident. The game had changed. Olivia Harrow thought this was a joke, but I had plans of my own, ones that didn't involve humiliation or invisible spreadsheets. Across the room, A small group clustered near the grand piano. Claire Bennett, young and ambitious, laughed too loudly at Olivia's antics. She was new, eager, and already trying to make herself indispensable to the wrong people. I remembered my first day, how naive I had been, how quickly the corporate machinery chewed you up if you weren't careful. I knew Claire wouldn't survive her first real challenge. I wondered if I should warn her. Instead, I watched Derek approach Olivia. His presence seemed to slow her, like a tide meeting a breakwater. She laughed, but there was a fraction of hesitation, a slight wobble in her confidence. He leaned in, whispered something, and she smiled too widely, nodded, and turned back to the stage as if nothing had changed. The crowd didn't notice, but I did. I knew I couldn't stay on the sidelines anymore. For years, I had played the invisible role, the fixer, the unseen protector, the one whose work kept the company afloat, while others basked in the glow of recognition. Now, standing there under the lingering tension of Olivia's misguided theatrics, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: control. Not the false control of compliance or survival, but real, calculated control. The auction resumed, and the bidding paddles went up for a set of expensive vacation packages. I wasn't interested. My mind was elsewhere, tracing connections, mapping possibilities. How could I redirect this chaos without anyone realizing? How could I ensure that the people who had laughed at me, the ones who had ignored my contributions for years, finally understood the cost of underestimating me? Then Derek glanced at me again. That nod, subtle, almost imperceptible, was a confirmation. He understood the stakes. He had seen the injustice too, and more importantly, he knew I had the capacity to act. In that moment, the invisible walls that had confined me for years began to crumble. Olivia, oblivious to the quiet storm brewing at the room's edge, raised her glass to toast the success of the evening. Everyone followed, their voices a chorus of hollow celebration. I raised mine too, but only to mask the storm inside. Inwardly, I calculated, planned, imagined, the ripple effect of just one small, well-placed action. Claire's laughter pierced my thoughts again. She had no idea what was about to hit her, what was about to hit all of us. I could almost see the dominoes lining up, each one representing a moment of arrogance, of ignorance, of overconfidence, and I was the hand that would set them falling. The night stretched on, a blur of glitter, forced smiles, and clinking glasses. But under the surface, beneath the show, the chessboard had been set. Olivia thought she controlled the game. Derek Vaughn knew the rules better than anyone. And I was no longer a footnote. I was the wild card. And soon, everyone in that room would learn that the invisible hand can be the most dangerous one of all. The next morning, the city seemed unchanged, indifferent to the storm brewing behind closed doors. I walked the streets, coffee in hand, blending into the current of commuters and tourists. Every reflection in the shop windows reminded me of what had happened the night before. The smiles, the laughter, the invisible chess moves that had been made. I felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that the first ripple was already in motion. Claire Bennett arrived at the office early, her energy buzzing with excitement. She didn't notice me in the lobby, and that was fine. I could study her from a distance, see how ambition bends under pressure. I remembered my early days, the mistakes, the missteps. This was her initiation, and unlike my own, she didn't have a mentor to warn her. By mid-morning, the office was a hive of activity. Derek Vaughn moved between meetings with an almost predatory focus, nodding at key players, exchanging subtle glances that others missed entirely. His approval was currency, and I had it silently. He had already identified the weak points in the organization, and I knew which ones I could exploit without detection. Olivia Harrow appeared at my desk, radiant and oblivious. "Emily, did you see last night? Everyone loved the auction. People are talking about it already," she said, eyes sparkling with unearned pride. I smiled, neutral, while my mind catalogued every misstep she had made, every laugh she had commanded, every corner she had cut to appear flawless. I remembered them all. I spent the afternoon sending emails, making calls, quietly realigning a few small projects. It wasn't noticeable yet, but the groundwork was set. Every decision I made was calculated, designed to highlight the competence of the few who understood the stakes and expose the errors of those who had ignored me for too long. Around 4 o'clock, a meeting was called. The conference room buzzed with nervous energy. Olivia stood at the head of the table, commanding attention as usual, but Derek Vaughn was there too, seated quietly, letting her perform. I watched her falter slightly as she tried to answer a question I had anticipated. A subtle smirk tugged at my lips. The first domino had fallen. Claire, seated near the center, fidgeted nervously. I could see the gears turning in her head, trying to anticipate the next move. She didn't realize she was already inside a game much bigger than she imagined. A misplaced word, a minor oversight, and she would stumble. And stumble she did. Derek finally spoke. Calm and precise, asking questions that exposed tiny inconsistencies in Olivia's reports. The room held its breath. Olivia recovered, but the doubt was planted. I could see it flicker in the eyes of the others, the subtle hesitation that comes when leadership appears flawed. After the meeting, I lingered, organizing notes and quietly observing. Derek approached, silent but commanding. "You handled that perfectly," he said. A simple statement that carried more weight than any applause. I nodded, letting the compliment slide without emotion, knowing the real work had just begun. By evening, the office seemed normal again, but the air had shifted. Patterns had been noted, alliances quietly tested, weaknesses identified. I returned home, tired but energized, tracing the lines of the next steps in my mind. Every action had a reaction, every move a counter. The game was no longer invisible. It was mine to control, and the world outside? It would never see it coming. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the blinds, cutting sharp lines across the hardwood floor. Emily Carter sipped her coffee slowly, savoring the calm before the storm. Every detail mattered, the position of the chair, the angle of the blinds, the hum of the city outside. She had planted seeds, and today, they would begin to sprout in unexpected ways. At the office, Claire Bennett was already scrambling. Emails pinged incessantly, schedules shifted, and minor crises appeared that had not existed the day before. Her usually confident demeanor faltered, her brow creasing with worry. She didn't know who was orchestrating the chaos, only that someone had noticed every flaw she had overlooked. Derek Vaughn, ever silent, watched from his corner office. He wasn't acting, he simply observed. When he nodded toward Emily during a brief exchange in the hall, the subtle signal was enough. The pieces were moving exactly as intended. Meanwhile, Olivia Harrow's morning began with a series of small humiliations. A report that missed critical numbers, a meeting where questions came too quickly for her to answer smoothly, and an email chain that exposed her oversight. The room seemed to tilt slightly under her feet, though no one dared mention it. Emily noted it all quietly, her satisfaction tempered by patience. By midday, tension had rippled through the office like a hidden current. Claire tried to steady herself, asking questions, offering suggestions, but each move was anticipated, each reaction countered. Emily's strategy wasn't aggressive, it was precise. The errors of others became the narrative. And the control, slowly, imperceptibly, shifted toward her. Lunchtime brought a small reprieve. Emily sat near a window, observing the city below. The world appeared ordinary, oblivious to the subtle battle unfolding within these walls. A server carrying coffee passed by, and she smiled faintly. Each person in this office thought they were acting independently, unaware of the invisible hand guiding their steps. Afternoon meetings pushed Olivia further into tension. A minor disagreement over resource allocation escalated under Emily's calm observation, revealing alliances that were weaker than they appeared. Claire, finally catching a glimpse of the larger picture, hesitated to act, unsure where loyalty lay. Derek remained the silent arbiter, a shadow of authority whose presence alone kept the balance just fragile enough to tip. By evening, the subtle chaos had done its work. Emily walked through the office corridors, nodding at faces she knew had begun to bend under pressure. Small victories, invisible to most, were lining up like dominoes. The stage was set for the next, more decisive moves, the ones that would cement her influence permanently. Returning home, she paused at the doorway, taking a deep breath. The city outside was still alive, the streets moving without notice of the silent upheaval within the office towers. But Emily knew the game had changed forever, and soon, everyone inside would recognize it. The following morning, the office felt different. Even the hum of fluorescent lights seemed sharper, charged with a new awareness. Emily Carter walked into the boardroom 5 minutes early, her posture calm, every movement deliberate. Derek Vaughn was already at the head of the table, quietly reviewing his notes. Claire Bennett arrived 2 minutes later, composed but cautious. She sensed the shift before she fully understood it. Something invisible had tilted the scales. Olivia Harrow followed, still attempting the armor of confidence, yet her eyes flickered with uncertainty. The meeting began without fanfare. Derek's team presented revised forecasts, exposing discrepancies, and reallocating authority in ways that left no room for missteps. Each slide, each chart, each subtle emphasis highlighted oversights, mistakes, and weaknesses in the executive team. Emily sat quietly, observing. She had orchestrated every minor detail, nudged every domino into place. Tiffany, once the untouchable center of attention, was no longer the focal point. She sat stiffly in her chair, her expression unreadable, realizing too late that the ground beneath her feet had shifted. As the presentation concluded, Derek turned to Emily. "Your contributions have been integral," he said. Voice even but commanding. "Effective immediately. You will serve as strategic advisor to the board. Full access, no filter." The room seemed to exhale. Claire glanced at Emily with a mixture of awe and wariness. Olivia's hands clenched slightly around her notepad. Tiffany's lips parted, her confidence evaporating, leaving only a fragile shell of the persona she had wielded for so long. No applause, no fanfare. Only the quiet acknowledgement of a power transferred, invisible until now, but undeniable. Emily's gaze swept the room, noting reactions, measuring the new dynamics. She allowed herself a small smile, calm, controlled, and entirely deserved. Later, in the hallway outside the boardroom, Emily passed by Karen, the HR representative who had once lectured her on company culture after the gala. Karen froze, caught between curiosity and recognition. Emily simply nodded, a silent confirmation of the unspoken truth. Control had shifted, and she had been the architect. All along. Stepping into the lobby, the morning sun warmed her face. The city below moved without knowledge of the drama that had unfolded within glass towers. Emily's phone buzzed. A message from Derek. "They'll never underestimate you again." She typed back one sentence. "Next time someone calls me irrelevant, remind them it costs at least $1 million. The streets of the city stretched out ahead, alive and indifferent, yet Emily felt a quiet triumph settle deep within. She had been invisible long enough. Now, every move she made would be seen, felt, and respected. The game had changed, and she was the one holding the board.